It's recording now.
Good evening, everyone. Please take a seat. We're going to be starting shortly. Good evening, everyone. Please take your seats.
Take it home and take it out in the hallway.
Do we have an agenda that I can read?
Good evening and welcome to this meeting of the Holmdel Township Zoning Board, today being Wednesday, August 17th. Call to order, please.
In accordance with the Open Public Meetings Act, NJSA 10-4-10, and the regulations governing remote meetings, NJAC 539 1.5, I hereby announce that adequate notice and electronic notice of this meeting was provided in a notice dated January 19th, 2022, that was sent to the Asbury Park Press, 2 River Times, posted on the bulletin board, and on the main access door to Town Hall, filed in the clerk's office and posted on the township's website, www.holmdeltownship.com.
Roll call, please.
Ms. Admin?
Here.
Dr. Blumenthal?
Here.
Mr. Burkle?
Here.
Ms. Campus?
Here.
Dr. O'Teague?
Here.
Mr. Luciani?
Here.
Mr. Papadopoulos?
Here.
Ms. Perez?
Here.
And Dr. Shaw?
He is not here. Okay, please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance and then stay standing for a moment of silence to honor the police, military, wounded or killed in action. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. We have on the agenda for tonight 3 different public hearings. We follow a specific process that's been dictated by the Municipal Land Use Law of New Jersey. At certain times during each of the hearings, there may be an opportunity for public to comment. Otherwise, it's just the applicant and their professionals or other witnesses testifying. And our normal procedure is public can ask at first questions of witnesses and only later at the end make comments on the overall, their perspective on a particular application, just to let you know. This meeting is being recorded and it's being live streamed on the township's website and on the YouTube and Facebook. Going to item 1.
Okay. 4 Overlook Drive, Christian and Veronica Kraus, Block 50.02, Lot 2, in the R40A zone, ZB variance number 452. Applicant seeks setback variance relief for a 9x12 pool pavilion, 2 feet from the property line where 25 feet is required.
For the applicant, we have Christian and Paul Kraus. Loretta, is the notice and escrow in order?
Yes, both in order.
One standard question. Does anyone view that they have any conflict with the Krauses? I've known the Krauses for a long time, but I don't believe it's a casual friendship. I don't think I have any conflict with hearing the application.
I've known Paul since the early 2000s. I served on the planning board with him for many years, environmental commission, and a friend all that time. So I am not sure if I should step down or not. I defer myself to the attorney.
If you have an ongoing friendship to this date,
We do.
I recommend, it's your choice, I would recommend that you step down.
Okay, I'll step down.
So
In that case,
you need to leave the room, and we'll call you back in when we're done.
All right.
okay, then we'll see Jill for Dimitri for this application. Okay, Christian and Paul, would you want to go ahead and present what you're seeking?
Yeah, I think the best thing is to go back in time to...
Before we start, you're both going to testify?
Yes.
Okay, so if you both raise your right hand, you both swear to tell the truth, so
Yes, sir.
If we go to South Beach, help you out. Thank you, that's good. With assistance, and for our professionals and zoning officer, for all the applications tonight, you swear to tell the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes, I do.
For the record, our professionals have been sworn in as well. Okay, I'm sorry. Just introduce yourself and.
My name is Paul Kraus. I'm Christian's dad and the original owner of the property, which is I purchased back in 1972. Shortly thereafter, we installed a pool. The property's on Overlook Drive, and by virtue of the name Overlook, that whole development, which was done in the late 60s, is completely on hills. And so there's a small amount of area that was cleared for the building itself, and a small area adjacent to the building for a septic system to be put in at that time. The septic system was moved, a pool was placed in, and a variance was sought at that time and granted. Thereafter, making improvements around the pool, I constructed what's being called a pool pavilion, which is depicted with a handout that I gave out. My recollection...
That's right, this is when I was 4 years old.
Yeah, so he didn't help much, he was only 4.
I was watching though, I guess.
My guess is 1978, I constructed what you see there. The reason for the first photo, though, is that going through some of the albums, looking for some background information on what is being called a pavilion, I found that I was able to locate one picture which had a date on the rear, and I used that as my first picture on the submission to you, and that photo would be July 4th, 1996. And if you look further down, you'll see a picture approximately of the same angle to the same structure that is current, July 4th, 2022. The reason for being here is that the original construction was not a fixed entity. You could drag it around here, 2 feet here, whatever the case was. Recently, when I redid it, it became fixed. And being it a fixed structure, it was only right and proper to come to the board to seek relief on the setback on the side. So that is the reason for being here. That is the background. It, as you see, the size of it is it has a 6 foot by 4 foot counter area, and originally a roof of 8 by 6. We're not talking about a pavilion in a gracious sense of Holmdel's pavilions. It's a small structure, but now that it is indeed fixed and has a slightly larger roof, I thought it to be what should be done is to seek a relief from its position.
And I just would say, add to that our neighbors of over 40 years, Margaret and Walter Costin, had never had an issue with the pavilion.
As a side issue, that my son brings up one of our neighbors who frequently comes over and sits at the pavilion. There is separating my closest neighbor approximately 14 feet of shrubbery at the property line. The nearest corner of his house is 45 feet from the property line, and it abuts to the back of his house where it's a 2-car garage. So its proximity to the neighbor is not in his front yard and a source of a problem. So I think that summarizes where I am and why I'm here and why we're seeking relief from the board.
And
Was this part of the application, or should we mark
They were
that?
submitted tonight.
So we'll mark that as A1.
So, Mr. Kraus, I had a phone call from one of your neighbors who actually, they're not here, and so what they said is not going to be part of this record in any way, because they were not comfortable coming forward to voice their
They shouldn't be here.
objection
She
to
can't do that.
your
Well, if they're not comfortable coming
Proposal.
forward, if they're not comfortable
Yeah.
coming forward, how can I assume that they had an issue that was pertinent
Well,
to the application?
I am telling you that they had an issue, so I have a couple of questions for
Oh,
you.
fine.
Can that, I understand you've made it fixed, but you just did that now. Is there any way that that could be moved off the property line so that it was more compliant with zoning requirements?
No, as I initially stated, the
Because of the
property
slope?
the property is totally on a hill.
Yes.
And
On
the
a
only,
slope,
the only clear area is the pool area and the house itself. So even the backyard, in the early days, the slope of the land came right up to the back of the house, which I excavated to give some sort of a backyard. So the backyard is very limited, and the pavilion affords entertainment and a place to get out of the sun in proximity to the pool. I'm sure if I were to physically drag it to the driveway,
And there's-
it would be out of the setback.
And there's there's a tree line right along the property line that's covering up.
Yeah, and I'm
So,
also
yeah.
not sure if your neighbor understood that it was already there versus something that you were looking to do currently.
that's very-
So
that's very
that would
possible.
make a difference, obviously, if you were looking to put something 2 feet off the property line now versus something that's been there. And I didn't discuss it with them. They more voiced what they had to say kind of before I really even quite realized what was going on. But it's just sort of noteworthy that not all your neighbors were objectionless, but people aren't comfortable always coming in and being confrontational with people they live on the same block with, so.
Well, this is a process, and I can state I'm not very comfortable being here myself.
I get that.
For years, I served on the planning board,
Yeah.
and it's not traumatic, but you do have certain stresses and fears, and I would encourage,
Yeah.
if it was one neighbor who has some apprehension,
Mhm.
as opposed to what are the dozens and dozens of certified mails that I put out, and not asking you to identify the neighbor, I can only say life goes on, and people who have apprehension have to get over it.
And we have to remember that you have to,
Yeah, they're
you
not
can't-
sworn.
they're not here, that
They're
you
not
can't-
sworn, they're not here.
you can't confront them with,
No,
whatever they think, isn't part of this record.
it is not part of the record, but it's also not true that no one had anything to say about it, and that people, so we'll consider it an anonymous comment, and it doesn't have any weight, they're not here,
No.
they're not sworn.
Let me offer something to you. You don't have to reveal the name of the person.
I couldn't even remember it if I tried, so
So
there.
if you were to after this meeting.
We're going off
Yeah,
base.
yeah,
It doesn't,
yeah.
we shouldn't even discuss it.
Yeah,
'cause
sorry. Yeah.
They're not here,
Okay,
so.
let me-
Got it.
Lonnie, as the zoning officer, you've been involved with the review of this. Do you have any comments?
No, it's been pre-existing since
78.
78, 79, I mean,
All right, so it's pre-existing and there's nowhere else in the yard you could move it to
No.
that you could
Yeah,
reasonably
The drawing
move it to, so.
should show that. There should be a grading plan that was submitted, and that would show
Yeah.
the slopes.
Yeah, I'm looking at the plan, I'm not an expert, I mean, at the drawing. But there's something here that you have like behind the house, existing decks, 4-foot walk, and then a conic walk. Could that be moved to where that is now? I assume if there's a walk there that the land...
CONC is probably concrete.
What?
CONC is concrete.
Concrete. So could it be moved to there, where there's a concrete walk?
It would not relieve the 25-foot setback.
But I don't think it would be 2 feet from the property line.
Well,
I'm just
Yeah,
suggesting,
I-
I'm just suggesting.
then I'll come back with 20 feet.
Yeah, I mean, again, one of the difficulties is, as Paul indicated, that the property is steep slope and it varies from a contour of about 230 to 290 across the width of the lot. So it's a 60-foot height difference from one side of the lot to the other.
And keep in mind that it was put in back in '78, and my family has grown to adore it as we've taken over the house and purchased the house for my dad.
Okay, so,
Yeah, could I ask one thing? There's a walkway, and then there's some, I don't know what it is, concrete or wood?
CONC is concrete.
Yeah. That's what
Right,
just
he knows
happened to
that.
me.
He's looking in between the walkway and the house.
I was
There's
saying, because
a-
it's still be by the
there's
pool.
a-
If you moved it
a
here,
blank
it's
piece
still,
that,
well, actually,
I don't know that
over
that's
here it
anything.
would
That's
be
what,
within the 50.
Yeah, I mean, could you put it there instead of where you have it? That's my question.
You have me at a disadvantage, you have a drawing that I
Yeah.
don't.
Well, it's your submission.
Yeah,
It's your-
I know, it's ours, but we've looked at it, and there's really was no feasible possible spot to put the pavilion.
You can't put it there then?
No.
Won't fit?
No, sir.
Well, the walkways are, I'm going to guess, are they 4 foot, standard 4 foot wide?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the
And that's-
walkway in front of the house is like, it looks like from the scale, it's approximately 4 to 6 feet from the house?
Yeah, the
And that-
house
Yeah.
is not a straight contour, so it.
Correct, and that area is probably landscaped and has some
It's
shrubbery
all
in it?
landscaped, yeah.
But if it's
The
4 to 6
walkway
feet,
directly in front of the house is a butt to the house, believe it or not.
yeah, but then, however, the pavilion is 9 by 12,
Right.
and that wouldn't fit in a 6-foot space.
Okay,
Correct.
okay. All right.
Other board members have any questions about this application? Kate, Bob, any questions, comments?
I just have one just quick question, just out of, how it's been there since 1978. When it wasn't permanent, when it wasn't fixed in place, did you ever kind of move it around the yard, or has it pretty much always just been there?
Always in that
It's
area.
always been
Okay,
there.
that's what I
yeah.
thought, I just wanted to confirm, just so it truly is pre-existing in that area as well.
To some sense, it was a mini sundial. As the sun would move.
Right.
I'd sometimes shift it a little bit so I'd get an afternoon shade, but otherwise it stayed within inches. you know,
Okay.
so.
Okay.
I have just one other question. What made you decide to make it a permanent fixture, which made you have to come before the board if, after all those years, it wasn't permanent, which was good for you?
I'm getting old, and I'm not going to be working on his property forever. And the choice was that to finish the landscape around the pool, go through the series of variances that we've done through the years, that this would be the last thing and my last gift to my son. That it's done, he has the enjoyment without apprehension that he's doing something as the state dictates and as you have rulings for. And it's the right thing to do. We need a variance, and we're here to ask for it. And I believe it has zero impact on the neighborhood, if anything. And again, I'm under oath. All our neighbors come over and sit at my pool pavilion and share a Coors or better. And
It's never been an issue.
it's something that finishes the house. I don't see us ever coming back.
No, my
asking for
children have
anything more.
breakfast down there with the iPads, and it's become part of the house. But yeah,
And it has a long family tradition. Again, if I had a free arm, I'd play violin as I spoke to you, but it goes back to the 70s when the kids were so small, handing me a piece of wood to cut to build. So it's become a family monument or whatever. So I think that really is any other questions.
Okay, so any other questions from members of the board? If not, then I think it's time to open the floor for the public. Do any members of the public that are here this evening have a question about the testimony that's been given? Does anyone that's here tonight have any comments on this application? Let the record reflect there are none. Close the public hearing. Any board discussion, and/or would anyone of the board members like to make a motion about this application? Gene?
Yeah, I guess I'd make a motion that we okay the variance.
I'll second that motion.
Any discussion on the motion? Roll call, please.
Ms. Avram?
Yes.
Dr. Blumenthal?
Yes.
Mr. Gergel?
Yes, to approve.
Ms. Campus?
Yes.
Dr. Latif?
Yes.
Mr. Luciani?
Yes,
And Mr. Perez?
Yes.
You have your approval. Enjoy.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, everyone.
Moving on to item 2.
Okay, 4 Sharon Lane, Vincent Giovanni, Block 15.01, Lot 2, in the R40A zone. Zoning Board variance number 463. Applicant seeks relief to construct a new portico located 44.58 feet from the front property line,
Loretta? Or, yeah, okay, somebody got it.
where 50 feet is required.
Fine. Yep. Okay. Assume you are Vincent Giuliani.
Geronimo, yes, I am.
Welcome. And is the notice and escrow in order?
Yes, both in order.
Does any member on the board or the applicant feel there's any conflict with any member that's here? The record reflect none?
I hope not.
Okay. Just introduce yourself, please, and then
My name is Vincent Geronimo. I live at 4 Sharon Lane, and I put in, I'm blessed with the setback line to be right at my front door. So I'd like to,
Just raise your right hand, we'll swear you in, please.
Sure.
You swear to tell the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God.
yes.
Thank you.
Joe, go ahead and present what it is that you're after.
So just doing some improvements, and where the house is right now, there's no roof in the front door, so you just get soaked. Part of the improvements is to build a portico and probably just redo a little bit of the steps, some mason work. Setback line is right at my front door. And aesthetically, and also just during bad weather, just looking to add that into the improvements.
Okay, Lonnie, comments?
Yes, this is a pre-existing condition. The house was built in 1964, right on the 50-foot setback line. The stairs are at 44.58 feet from the front property line. So it is pre-existing, non-conforming. I could not give him a zoning permit because it would make the non-conformity worse.
So you're saying even before this,
Yeah.
it's
Yeah,
non-conforming?
if you look at the survey that he submitted, there's a faint outline of his stairs that are way after the setback line by about 6 feet.
Wow.
You can faintly see them, and if you look on the green plans for his construction, you'll see where the proposed covered porch is, and you'll see where that setback line is. Our construction records do not go back to 1964, as much as I looked for them, so it was built this way.
Wait, you're saying the fifth, which line is it you're saying?
Very faint. You can see the-
Okay, now it's the stairs going up, right, and there's some very faint area there,
Yeah,
so that those steps are also non-conforming?
yeah, those steps are that 44.58. He's not going very much bigger, he's mostly just putting a portico on it. So I believe his setback proposal of 44.58.
No front porch, Mr. Bronner, just the cover on the steps, that's it?
Yeah, I mean, it depends on your yeah, I think a stoop,
Yeah.
I'm used to that word too. Stoop is definitely more for me. So when you say porch, it's like, I draw a picture like all in front of my house. No, it's
No,
just,
I was asking if you're also looking to do a porch.
no, not at this time.
I'm spending your money for you.
No, it's okay. There's enough going in, it's all right. I appreciate it though, thank you. Porch would be nice.
So Lonnie, just so the record's good, so the stairs, the proposed stairs will be wider than what's there, or?
They'll be slightly wider, they're gonna be about, I believe.
I think it's 10 square, I think it's 10 in total. So you split the difference from the middle,
It's 9 feet, 10 inches.
and that's because of the addition of the columns.
Of the columns on the porch. So it's not much longer at all, but it's wider by 9 feet, by 9 feet wide, by 6 feet 10 inches long. So his proposed setback of 4458 will do it.
And there's no current portico, right? That's
No.
gonna be-
There's nothing, there's not even like an
There's
overhang.
a picture of the balloon.
Like I said, it's the older home, it's from 1964.
Two steps.
No questions.
Any board members have any questions about this application?
No.
Bob or Kate? Questions, comments?
Nothing from me.
Relatively simple.
I have one thing.
Sure.
He is going to ask, can I speak?
Sure, I can.
He's going to ask to proceed at his own risk to start construction on this. Is that a thing that you,
I don't think
That's not us. Yeah, if you, I mean,
Exactly, if obviously if there's
You don't want to wait for the
The
approval
appeal
period to run.
period?
Right.
Yeah.
it's a
The
45-day
normal
resolution. Obviously, if somebody
process-
complains, we'll stop. But
It'll be like 3 months before you have a non-appealable published resolution, let's
Yeah.
call it. So if you start today, there's a risk somebody could appeal it.
if
So as
it's
long as you
okay, I'm
understand
willing
your
to take
risk.
that risk. And then
We
if
can
there's,
give you permission, but we can't stop you.
Can't
so-
stop, but then it's up to Lonnie to stop you or not.
Yeah, I mean, because what our normal procedure is, and applies to the previous one as well, and that when we did take a vote, that is the step in the approval. The actual formal approval comes in a month or so after our attorney writes up a formal approval resolution. That gets voted on, then that has to get recorded and noticed.
yeah.
And there's a timeline when, 45 days after that, when it can be appealed by somebody. So until it's all locked in, you're at your risk if you do anything prior to that.
Fully aware, thank you, fully aware of the process. I just want to know if I could
Marty,
start.
can you have it for him for the next meeting, do you think?
Yeah, we can try that for the next meeting.
Hey, Lonnie, doesn't he have to have a building permit, though? So how's he going to get it?
he wants to apply?
How's he going to get a permit then if we don't have an approval? Will they issue one?
I will put in the zoning permit that he's proceeding at his own risk.
Oh, okay.
For a zoning board.
So you'll give him a
Sign
permit?
off.
Well, he got the
Yeah.
road. He
Okay.
just doesn't
Yeah,
have
I mean, and it does not appear that there's going to be any conditions that he would have to meet. Now, if there's any additional escrow that would have to be paid, he would be on the hook for that. But
There's
I
Lonnie.
don't believe he's going anywhere. I know where he lives.
There you go.
Lonnie, do we need an as-built on this?
We are going to have the plans will be an as-built. We do not need a final as-built.
Okay.
It's not necessary.
Okay, I mean, the house is where it is, and everything is marked off from the house, whereas we've had other situations with the pool, a contractor comes and puts it somewhere else.
And he's only got porch.
Someplace.
Yeah. Yeah. Any other questions or comments from the board members?
I'd like a motion to...
Well, let me, wait, I have to do public first. In that case, let me open the public portion. Does any members of the public have questions or comments on this application? Let the record reflect there were none,
Now, Dimitri.
and the public hearing is closed. Any final comments from you?
I'm good, thank you.
You're good, okay. And any comments from the board members? Or I think Dimitri would like to make a motion.
I'd like to make a motion to approve the variance
Second.
as described.
Board discussion? Roll call, please.
Ms. Avron?
Yes.
Dr. Blumenthal?
Yes.
Mr. Durkle?
Yes, to approve.
Ms. Campus?
Yes.
Dr. Latif?
Yes.
Mr. Luciani?
Yes.
And Mr. O'Banatopoulos?
Yes.
Good luck.
Thank you so much.
Look at us, 2 applications have gotten.
31 minutes.
Look at us.
These were amongst our simplest applications that we've had, so. Moving on, item 3.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Uh,
Okay. Holmdel Storage Developers, LLC, 2125 NJSH Route 35, preliminary final major site plan, number 2022-01, Block 58, Lot 25, in the TMHO-3 zone. Applicant proposes to construct a 4-floor, 3-story, and basement self-storage facility along with associated parking, handicap parking, loading, and driveway areas. Variances are requested to reduce the front yard setback to allow the placement of the building and parking within the setbacks required. It is also required to eliminate the front and side yard landscape buffer requirements to allow the placement of the project as shown on the plans. A variance is also requested for FAR to allow the proposed project.
Loretta, is the notice and escrow in order on this? You want to introduce yourself?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. My name is
And
Tyler
there's-
Prime.
Let me get one other preliminary thing. Does any member of the board aware of any conflict they may have with the applicant?
No.
Or are you aware of any conflicts that any of us may have?
Okay, I think our planner might represent one of the members on the board on a pending application elsewhere.
Would that
Is that-
present a
Yeah,
conflict?
I think so, yeah. What? Is that you, Joe?
Okay, it's me, yes.
Yeah, okay, she's our alternate, and so she has to, okay, and that, good to identify that now.
Hold on, you didn't vote. Wait, Loretta, she didn't vote on the resolution, right? That we have to memorialize. Okay.
Okay, thank you, Jill. Okay, you want to introduce yourself, and then we'll go ahead.
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and members of the board. As I said, my name is Tyler Prime with the firm of Prime & Tuvell. We've previously been before this board several times, first on April the 6th for our initial completeness hearing. The board had asked for some additional items, which we went back and we did complete and resubmitted, and then on June 1st, our application was deemed complete. For the application, we're proposing a new state-of-the-art self-storage facility as dictated by Loretta. It's 109,400 square feet on approximately 5.35 acres. Site location is 2125 Route 35. The self-storage use, the type of self-storage we're proposing is permitted in the zone. We're seeking the floor area ratio variance as well as several bulk variances for the setbacks as well as the buffer and screening. Additionally, as a result of some of the feedback from your board professionals, we've made some modifications to the site plan to provide some increases, which you'll hear about shortly, for the setbacks and the buffering. We've tried to bulk that up a little bit, and I'll get right into our witnesses. I'm anticipating 3 witnesses. I have others, but I'm thinking I'll need 3. So whenever you're ready, maybe have all 3 sworn at once, if that's your pleasure, and then I'll have them qualified individually.
Okay, I'll want to have them all stand and.
Sure.
You know, just raise your right hand, just swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth? So for the record, the 3 witnesses have been sworn, and Mr. Prime, can you just identify who they are for the record, and when when you
Absolutely.
come up and give them their, their background, we can.
Absolutely.
Give their names.
Thank you.
Just let me
Do you want
also,
to identify
Which
now?
3? Yeah, just tell us who they were.
Sure. We have Donald Haas. He prepared the site plan. And we've got Mitch Feldman. He's the contract purchaser and the operator of the storage facility. And then Christine Cafone should be our planner.
okay, let me just expand on one thing that was briefly mentioned,
Sure.
that one of the key variances they need is for FAR. FAR stands for floor area ratio. And the zone permits 15%, and they're asking for 40-some percent. And it's New Jersey's municipal land use law says if you need an FAR variance, you come to the zoning board.
That's
And
correct.
that's why we're here tonight.
Yes. We okay to proceed?
Yeah, I mean, let me just, a couple of things. There has been an engineering review letter from Colliers dated May 27th. There's been a review letter from our planner dated August 10th. We also got a comment letter from the County Board of Health dated August 16th with a number of conditions. And I'm not quite sure how you wish to proceed, but the comments in those review letters were what I'll call extensive. And the number of variances needed is, let me say, extensive also. So I'm not sure at what point it makes sense to get into all of the details, or alternatively, if you may want to just summarize the nature of the changes that you're making from the plans that all of us have been looking at.
Sure. I'm going to start with...
Just for the record, our board professionals have already been sworn, so they're under oath still.
Great.
Sure.
I'm going to start with Donald Haas. As I said, he'll provide kind of an overview of how the site lays out, how it functions, and the changes that we've made to try to alleviate some of the pressure in these variances that we've requested.
Okay.
Need help?
You have any easel?
Hard to have one.
We have one.
I have one.
Yeah, thank you.
I mean, I mean, without that, they've got nothing. Although I don't know why they're using septic. On the record. Take care.
All right.
So originally Just to start qualifying first. Okay. Just your name and your professional background qualifications for the board.
My name is Donald Hawes, H-A-A-S. I'm with Bojet Engineering. We're the project engineers for this project. I'm a licensed landscape architect in Pennsylvania and Maryland. I'm working to get the New Jersey clarification or coordination set up to have that here as well. I have 19 years experience in civil site landscape development for projects, and I've testified throughout New Jersey, Pennsylvania, and Delaware.
Have you ever testified before a zoning board before?
Yes, I have.
Wait, so you said you're a licensed architect, you're also a licensed engineer?
I'm a licensed landscape architect in Pennsylvania and Maryland. I'm working to get the reciprocal with New Jersey currently, but I am not licensed in New Jersey.
Nor you are not also, on the hand, a licensed engineer in New Jersey?
No, I'm not.
Okay, so we accept your credentials as a landscape architect.
Thank you.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay, the original plan we had presented was requesting a 50-foot front yard setback. Based on some of the feedback in the reviewing engineer's letter, some of the discussions on our initial completeness hearings, we understood that the Route 35 corridor is an area that the township's looking to see some improvements on. So we've adjusted the plan to give as much of a front yard setback as we can. We moved the building back and reshaped it to get them a 60-foot front yard setback and enhance the landscape buffer that we are proposing along the frontage with Route 35. So we've tried to make that landscape buffer as intense as we could for that frontage there. Now, the 60-foot setback is from one portion of the site.
Can we identify? This is Marcus Loretta? A1?
That portion.
Just hold up a second. Just describe what that document is, so for the record.
Read off the... What's the title?
Mr. Haas, just tell us what that page is, so for the record, is it?
The page is the site plan. That is part of our application where we've adjusted it.
What page number can is it on there somewhere?
Dates. Page 5.
Thanks.
We've added some additional dimensions to the adjusted site plan for this.
What's the date on it? The date.
The original date,
No, the date of the revision.
the day of the revision will be today's date.
What's the original date on that?
November 22nd, 2021.
So this is not, it's a revision, but it's not the one it was not submitted as part of the plans.
Correct.
So do we have, does the board members have this or not yet?
No.
Okay. No. You don't have smaller copies by any chance?
I do.
Do you?
We don't have.
No, we're getting a small
They
copy
have a
of it.
copy of it coming down here. Is that enough for everybody?
Yeah, I think so.
Yes. So the 60-foot setback that we've adjusted the plan to is on the east side of the property. There's a wedge of a neighboring property that kind of cuts in there between our project site and Route 35. And that, where I put a red line on our plan here, is the smallest of the setbacks that we are requesting. The setback from Route 35 right-of-way, we are looking at 68 feet at its closest point to Route 35's right-of-way. Because of the 35 being on a curve there, there's only one point of the building that's at 68 feet. The rest of the building is further back from the 35 corridor.
And the requirement for that is 100?
Correct.
Now, let me jump to the back of the building, because in fact, all sides of the building are constrained in one way or another. Behind the building, there's extensive wetlands,
Correct.
and those have been identified here.
Yes, they have.
It is an ordinance requirement here that wetlands be put into a conservation easement. And that easement should be noted on the plans, and there'll be meets and bounds and deeds required for that.
We understand that.
The purpose of that easement is to protect the wetlands. And there is to be no construction activity in that easement area before or after.
Understood.
In order for that to be able to happen, since construction usually doesn't take place on a point of a pin, and usually when you construct a building, machinery is used and ladders, there is a separate ordinance requirement that no structure be within 20 feet of a conservation easement. You have 0. You can't build the spot that's at 0.
The wetlands, we have a 50-foot buffer from the wetland line. We have a letter of interpretation from DEP for that wetland line.
But the easement needs to be on the entire buffer, not just the wetlands.
Okay.
In other words, the structure by ordinance cannot be closer to the easement and the wetland buffer than 20 feet.
Ralph, can we have our professionals verify all these things
Yeah,
you're saying?
you really aren't testifying, so.
Okay, Kate, would you want to comment on that? It's in Kate's letter.
Right.
So let her testify to it.
Yep.
Yeah, sorry, so I was just looking, because I saw a version of this that was not formally submitted, but I was just looking at this to see if any of the other dimensions had shifted on the plans, which I don't believe they have, but I'm just seeing this now as well. Yeah, the township ordinance gives strong authority to the provision of conservation easements for various types of resources. Sorry, I'm just trying to find it in my, yeah, and the places that, so conservation easements may be required, this, and I think typically the board has required them for wetland buffers as well. So yes, so then there's also a requirement that all principal buildings shall be set back at least 20 feet from a conservation easement. The board might remember that came up in the case, it was a stream corridor and a stream buffer easement, but that came up in the case of the gasoline convenience store. Yeah,
Right, so they would need to be set back 20 feet. We couldn't give that relief because
you can grant relief from that, but they have to put testimony on for relief. Relief was granted in the case of the, I believe, writing on the application name. New Horizon, yes. But they would have to put the variance proofs on, and the township, has specific, whenever there's purposes of the ordinance, and in this case there is a specific purpose, which is that it's to not disturb the underlying buffer, their testimony would have to reflect that.
I have another question. I thought maybe Lonnie would be more historical, but on that corridor, recently, in any kind of improvements we've allowed, I've been here in 8 years. We have not, I guess, had much building that on the 35 corridor that required a variance, because we haven't granted a variance like this in recent memory.
Are you referring to the FAR variance or?
Well, right now we're just on the setbacks, right?
Yes.
Yeah, we're not up to the FAR variance yet.
No, the front, because the properties on, both sides of 35, but especially this side, do tend to be very deep.
Yeah.
It has not typically been an issue. With this board, for example, the Bright View next door was before the planning board. They're in a slightly different, they have slightly different zoning provisions, but they were able to meet a 100-foot setback. This property is constrained in a different way because of the extent of the wetlands.
Right,
But
which
yes,
maybe
typically.
means that that this may not be a suitable development plan for that particular lot. I think the 35 corridor and the way it looks as kind of the gateway to Holmdel is particularly important, and we've had other applications before this board to do other things on 35 that don't meet the way that Holmdel likes things to look on its corridor there. So I'm just trying to think, and I can't think of anything where we've not in recent times given somebody such a large variance for a frontage setback on Highway 35.
I would say not in my short, so it's been 2 years that I've been here, not.
I've been here 8 years, Dimitri.
Yeah,
You've been here 20.
20 plus.
Yeah.
I would also note that, those are all items that, the applicant will have to address in their testimony.
Yeah.
And one,
Correct.
And on behalf, I'm not going to speak for the applicant's planner, but, one thing that you're trying to show how it may have impact on neighboring properties, whether it can accommodate the use, that could include what the neighboring setbacks are, et cetera. So, those are all things that the applicant will have to address as part of their testimony.
I think we like things set very far back from the highway, hence the 100-foot setback, and this is really a dramatic variance request in that regard, because it's going to really change how things look in that section. And while nothing is a precedent for anything else in zoning board, you still have to think about those things when you grant the variance request. So, yeah, I'm giving you feedback right off, because obviously you've got to convince us that you're entitled to the relief, and this is immediately a concern that I have.
Yeah, and I brought up the rear setback,
Yeah.
because
Well, that's it.
the site is squeezed in a sense
Yeah.
from all directions.
Yeah.
And it's that rear one that it did not appear that you were aware of.
I was aware it was from the wetlands, and we
But that,
had the 50
there have
feet.
been other locations in town where it became a problem. Somebody wanted to maintain their building and couldn't put a forklift or anything back there. So that's the reason where the 20-foot came from. Now, can one go to 19? Yeah.
So he's at 0.
But they're at 0.
Yeah.
And so you can't, the whole point of the conservation easement is to protect our resources and our environment.
Mhm.
Just think about it. If you had a fence following that line that you put up, you couldn't build the building there without touching that fence, right?
It would be difficult.
Couldn't do it.
I
It's
believe we have like a
impossible.
foot or
You'd
so
have to
off
put
the line.
footings in.
We're not at absolute zero there.
Yeah.
But we tried to orient the building, so it only is a couple points where it comes in to that line there. We didn't,
But contractors will run their machinery, and they won't jump, and they don't have helicopters usually.
Yeah, I mean.
So I think all of these things need, I don't know quite how you want to proceed here, but there's clearly some concerns about, on all sides of the building, the scale.
I have a question. 3 stories is the maximum height they can do in that location.
Kate?
Kate, what's the height requirements here?
Yes, the maximum height requirement is 3 stories above grade or 35 feet.
And there are some other buildings along that corridor that are about 3 stories, but nothing higher.
Does that only apply to the front? Because according to the application in the back, the 4th story will be at ground level, if I
Yes,
understand.
yes.
But it only applies to the front, the 3?
That's my understanding is how it's measured.
It's across the street. I don't know what that is, but that's
Hmm?
the other self-storage is across the street.
That's
Yeah.
3 stories
Yes.
also, yes.
Is that 3?
Yeah.
yes.
Or 2, it's either 2 or 3.
It has 3 levels because I had a space in there, it has 3 levels.
A total of 3.
Well, this one has
Sorry,
a
I would
roof.
actually just like to correct myself. There's an overlay here, and we're not using the overlay. We're using only TMHO3 zoning here. There actually is the number of stories is not limited. The building height is limited to 35 feet.
On all sides?
Based on township measurement, I believe my understanding is that they measured it correctly.
Does it apply to the front and back?
Let me get that.
How high is your proposal?
It is 3 stories, 35 feet.
So 35 is allowed.
At the
in
front.
zone?
But it's 4 stories
So
at the
there's no
back.
variance for that.
No.
They can't do 4.
But in the back, it's going to be more.
So they can't make this higher and reduce their footprint and have
No.
the same square
No, because
footage.
they have to go to
They'd have to
35
reduce
feet.
the square footage.
Yeah, so I think, well, unfortunately Lonnie isn't here. She's the one know for sure, but how you measure the height. You met front and back?
I would also note, the applicant mentioned they don't have their architect here. There was no height on the architectural plans, which was one,
We just, I didn't know
Oh,
if we needed.
yeah, typically we like to hear testimony. That's a pretty important question that I have. How is the height measured?
Let's- Yeah, I
Because
mean,
that's
can-
another thing,
Can
yes.
Or you or Loretta contact Lonnie and get information about that, and then that can be.
No, I mean, I can tell you how the height is measured. I just didn't know how they measured their height. You know what I mean? Like, the height is measured it's from the vertical plane on each side of the building.
On each side?
What is it? I was wanting to get the exact words. Oh, no, it's the average height it's the average height of the roof. Sorry, I just want to make sure I'm speaking. A lot going on. Let me make sure I'm speaking clearly. The building height is measured from the grade plane around the building to the average roof height. So it's not, the maximum, the building height is not going to be measured from the absolute highest you see in the rear, because it's kind of like almost like what you would call a walkout basement if it was a residential use. That's not going to be the measured height, and because of the fact that the way the grade is, we don't know these things without having their specific measurements. Because I'm not sure, with nothing on the plan said where the 35-foot was taken from. And we do mention that in our report.
Even if it is the average, if they're saying the front of the building is 35, but the 4th story is going to be at ground level, I would assume the average is going to be over 35.
I'm not going to assume that without seeing it.
Yeah, no,
really.
but I mean,
Yeah.
that could be possible.
Yeah, and I also, was not.
Yeah, no, I
Didn't
understand.
know where the 35 was
The
measured from.
architect is here, maybe rather we should let you call him up to answer this question at least, rather than keep going round and round.
Yeah.
What are we doing with the 20 feet? We jumped over it. I mean,
Coming back. We'll come back.
Hold on, we didn't jump off it, we have 2 major setback issues.
Good.
Oh, there's a lot of
Yeah.
jump off anything.
We gotta
We just kind of went forward for a moment.
Well, plus there's side setbacks. The
There's
blue.
lots of problems.
Let's, we're gonna swear in the architect. Just way to tell the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God.
Yes.
Just state.
My name is William Von Fricken, and I represent Frank Ruff Architects.
Just spell your last name.
VONFRICKEN.
You've heard some discussion going on. I don't know if you
Yes.
can comment on.
I can comment on a few things. In regards to the footprint of the site, there's a lot of constraints we have with the site, as you can see. With the piece of property in front of the lot, also in the back, we have the wetlands. So we had some hardships with just actually the layout of the building itself. In order to meet the square footage that we actually want and actually develop on the small portion of the site we can, this is the footprint that we actually came up with. I apologize for me crouching down, but okay.
Right in the middle.
Twist it, yeah.
Turn that.
Yeah.
There you go. In regards to the building height, we measured it from the grade plane from the entry point. That was the average grade plane that we had. So we're 35 to the roof height for that. That's where we came up with the roof height.
When you say entry, you mean
The-
the sales office?
From the sales office, from Route 35, that's where we measured it from.
That's the highest point of the property.
That's the point of the property that we would be developing from, though.
So how does that work, Kate?
Did you look at our township definitions for building height and grade plane?
Yes.
Okay. So basically, it's the grade plane is defined by the township as the reference plane representing the average of finished ground level adjoining the building at exterior walls, which, generally means, and I will leave, if I misspeak, in technical sense, please correct me, because I don't do these I decode the zoning, but I don't do the actual measurements myself usually. But there are certain provisions made for, where it's measured from the building and how far distance it is, where I believe it's 6 feet here. Did you measure it from 6 feet from the building?
We measure it from 6 feet from the building, so that's the
Okay.
entry point.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I would just ask that, we need to see that. I don't, I can't tell from what he's describing if he meets this standard or not.
So are you
Because the
you
site does drop.
correct?
So-
So is what, Kate, are what you saying it's the average from the average plane, so not just the front, but the average of front, back, and sides?
The reference plane shall be established by the lowest points within the area of the building and within 6 feet from the building.
Yeah,
So that's the back.
But the back of the building is not the entry point. So the way that we interpret it is that it was from the average of the plane of the entry. So if your building was sloping at the front of the building, going down on one side, not the back of the building, because theoretically, if you built up the back of the site, you can say that that's not the height of the building then. If you wanted to infill around the site, then who says that's actually the high point or low point then?
But that's not what Kate's saying.
No, and I have to admit, we might want to talk offline about this, because there is a little, this is where the ordinance kind of does get a little contradictory, where there's difference in the definitions between grade plane and finished grade. One is at the front exterior wall, and one is all around the building. So you may have interpreted it to mean the front exterior wall.
That is correct.
Which I have to admit, I did too, or I have in the past, because these are two different kind of measurements.
Yeah, and I think the point to that is that if you wanted to infill around the building, then the height of the building will change significantly if you drop it lower or higher. So that's where you take theoretically in all of our works, that's where we take it from.
Okay, well,
From
yeah.
the grade plane, not
So
the entry.
for purposes of my record, which is all I'm asking questions.
Sure.
It seems that, Kate, correct me if I'm wrong, we may need submissions to you guys, you're gonna have to review them, and this is gonna have to be at a second hearing. We're not resolving this tonight.
No,
Okay.
and I mean, we really, it's not, I get it, I kept it very simple in the report because I wasn't sure what we were measuring or where we were measuring from. But honestly, the applicant should submit building height measurements on the elevations and with the grading, and we need averages, we just need to be able to look at all those things.
And then, Kate, you might want to involve Lonnie, the zoning officer.
Mm-hmm.
'Cause
Yeah.
she's the one in construction that goes out and measures and enforces.
Okay.
Yeah, and I would just note, the board may be aware, the applicant's awareness is that if you were to go over 35 feet per this measurement, you can go up to 38.5 feet, which is 10% over, and request a C variance from the board. If you go above 38.5 feet, which is 3.5 feet over 35, 10%, another D variance would be required.
And I just want to make note, that's just to the top of the roof itself, not to the parapet height.
No, it is to the,
The roof plane.
Yeah, the average height of the roof surface.
Yes.
Yeah, not the parapet.
Yeah. So I have drawings that show the heights of the parapet, but I don't have anything that's cutting the building in sections, so you can actually see that roof height. But on our submission, it says that the height of the roof would be at 35 feet.
35 feet, but we don't know from where.
Yeah, so.
Yeah, I mean,
And that, you're doing it at the front, and there's a question of how you figure it with the back.
yeah, and the challenge I had with the submissions is that there's nothing labeled on the actual architectural plans. It's only stated on the site plans, and, you know, we just like to have our checks and balances there.
I think, well, there are a number of issues that have been raised here that are open questions, and I think what's probably best is...
Those are the rendering, yeah.
This was all that was in my package.
Okay.
Right, there are going to be some other questions as well, and I think where we're going to end up is that not attempting to complete tonight, but rather identify a list of questions to be worked by your professionals and our professionals offline, and try to come up with some better proposals to go through all of the comments in Kate's letter and in Bob's letter, and then come back to the board in some weeks, couple of months or something like that, after you've all had a chance to work together on these things. And to take a look again at all the setbacks on all sides. I mean, Valerie clearly indicated she's bothered by it. I'm certainly bothered by it. I like to see that the 20 feet is honored in large measure. In some sense, you used the word hardship, but it's not a hardship created by the property. Hardship is created by your desire to put a certain sized building here.
I think, again, the look of that area and the setbacks of buildings are particularly important to the people that live in this town, and that fits with what you see. If you look at Lowe's, for example, you can't even see that building from the highway. So there's an idea that things are supposed to be set back. Even as Kate mentioned, the most recent thing, which will be neighboring you, is the assisted living is in compliance with the setbacks. They are set back 100 feet from the street. So that is particularly important, that we have buildings set back sufficiently from the highway. We don't want things on top of the highway in our section of Highway 35. Other towns maybe don't care about that, but we do care about that.
And there's also, I don't see how much room there'll be to put any landscaping. Some large trees, evergreen trees to hide the building, so that we don't just see this big, tall building there. I mean, we're not even getting into the architect and the looks and the color of the building, but basically, you're probably getting the idea that we want to not really see the building.
Yeah.
As Valerie said, I was around when Lowe's came here, and I wasn't actually, I had to disqualify myself. But I know that we made a point of creating a large buffer there. Okay, excuse me?
You're a large shareholder?
No, for the other company. So therefore, it's the same thing with this building. We need it to look, this is a main corridor for Holmdel. We need it to look nice, and I don't see where you're going to put all that the way this is.
So my name is Mitch Feldman. I'm the applicant. And, these are all professionals. They're technical. I see clearly where we're at, okay? And I just thought it'd be more appropriate just for me to kind of share with you what we're thinking and show it to you, if we could. And I was sworn in. Well, I've been building self-storage for 25 years. I started the company myself. We're a small company. I'm from Miami, Florida. We build in Florida. We built in Puerto Rico. We built in New Jersey, Pennsylvania. We're now in Maryland, Indiana. So we've expanded our footprint. What's interesting, when I say Puerto Rico, everyone kind of thinks, Puerto Rico. So we were an innovator. We were one of the first to go outside the country to Puerto Rico. And when people think of self-storage, they think of, you know, those big orange garage doors with contractors and, you know, that kind of use. That's history. Today we're building, and what we've done in Miami and Puerto Rico, we built 7-story, 8-story climate-controlled facilities that are for residential owners. The whole storage industry has changed. I mean, I have a video that I want to show you guys of the building we're conceptualizing, and we build them with all LED lights, with, you know, during COVID, we got very sensitive about touch. So all our keypads now, you don't have to, you could go from your phone and enter by Bluetooth. We have, you know, the interior, sometimes the colors, ours are all white inside, so it's bright. And I kind of say it, you know, I'm serious about it, you know, where you'd let your wife go and she's not looking around the corner, it's creepy, it's, you know, where my wife is comfortable to go. And we come to towns that we like. And, you know, I've been here several times now. It's a beautiful town, it's upscale, it's nice. I appreciate what you're talking about with the landscape and the corridor and to beautify it. So when we first came in here, you know, we saw the storage facility across the street that's on a 50-foot setback, and it's built in 2002, so this is 20 years later. I mean, what we're proposing is, you know, that's where you're going to rent your storage. You know, we're proposing something nice that fits into the town. And the lot came to us through the owner, and, you know, we took a lot of time on the contract trying to work with the city. So if you give me and I appreciate the comments, and we want to work with you. We're not here to be an adversary. This is a long-term asset for me. We're not a big company. We've done over 2 million square feet of storage, so we're strong where we can do it, and we have the wherewithal, but we want to work with the town. So if there are things we can adjust, we'll adjust them, and we'll try to fix it. But in order to get it done, we do need some leniency, but we're trying to compensate it mitigate it with the big landscape in the front. And can we show the video? Just so they know what we're talking about?
Try to get that.
You know, like you guys have a vision of like a 2-dimensional gray box. If I could share with you for 2 seconds what we're proposing.
Excuse me, while they are bringing up the video, may I ask a question?
Yeah.
You used the word innovation, so can you comment on how much carbon footprint reduction are you doing in terms of energy efficiency there?
So I don't have a carbon footprint number. I mean, I'm not that sophisticated. But what we do is, like, right now we're building one in Voorhees, New Jersey, and we're putting in an EV charging station. And no one does that in a storage facility. But we would do that here, because it's kind of just the way we operate. So, you know, we use LED. I mean, I understand your question and the point of it. I don't have that answer for you, so I don't really know. I know that self-storage, of all the uses, if you have a retail property or fast food or an office building, they generate so much use in terms of cars and traffic. Self-storage on a national average, I mean, we'll maybe have 6 cars an hour here on average.
Can I just say?
The TV's not on.
Yeah.
The
Okay.
TV's not on.
Can
I'm not sure if this is the correct cable, or if there's another spot to connect to.
you know what? Can I have the renders?
Is-
Just give me the renders. Give me something to hold on.
Just you know, we're hearing kind of a lot of. We just heard some traffic testimony, I think.
So
Can I just finish?
Yeah, sorry.
So I just, for the board's edification only, 2 things I just want to mention: that self-storage is a specifically permitted use in this zone, provided it, you know, is this quote-unquote 3rd generation, you know, modern self-storage, which, you know, we're not even there yet. You know, I have in my letter, we have asked the applicant to provide testimony indicating that they will meet these certain requirements, which is like climate control, you know, all of the units are accessible from the inside, et cetera, which, as far as I can tell, is what the applicant is proposing here. So I just want to be clear that the use is permitted. Second of all, you know, the applicant just mentioned the safeguard self-storage across the street. That was approved on 2002. That was approved under prior zoning. the zoning was not.
And is that only 50 feet?
It's at an angle, so it looks more, it looks a little more, I was looking at it a couple weeks ago. I think, it's more, I think it's about 50 feet, but it is sort of like a pinch point, and it's a much smaller building.
Right, because
But-
that one is angled, so when you
Yes.
come in, you access it from the other direction.
Yes.
And it's, I don't know, you can't really see that one from the
Well, it's-
highway. The way it's landscaped, you can't
But
see
there,
that
the
from
two
the
things
highway.
there to remember are that it is angled so that it is, it's not like a whole frontage of 50 feet, but at the same time, I believe that, my understanding is that was in accordance with the zoning that was in place at the time.
so the zoning
Since then, the TMH03 and the Route 35 zoning were both put in place. Just to be clear, this is not the, under the overlay. This is a use that's permitted in the baseline TMH03, which is, transitional mixed highway,
Overlays.
no, it's not overlay, mixed highway, damn, I'm close, but anyway, you get the idea. But both the TMH3 zone and the Route 35 overlay at the present require 100-foot setback from Route 35.
And just to clarify, I wasn't saying they have 50 feet, give me 50 feet.
No, I just wanted
Right,
to
but I mean, I get it. I'm not saying that at all.
No, I figured the board
You
would
know.
just have questions about
You're right.
that.
I'm
Like,
absolutely not, saying, look at them, look at, I
That's for your
respect.
planner to do. No, I was kidding.
Yeah, no. Can we pop it?
May I ask
Dr.
one
Lacey?
question?
Yes. Mhm.
Check this approved use, how many storages can we have in that area? Does it specify 2, 3,
Absolutely
5,
not.
10?
No. This is in a permitted use in the TMH03 zone. If they met all of the conditions, it could be, that's not the way zoning works. It's not like, when there's a use variance, you can consider something like that. This is fully a permitted use. And, as we get further into the hearing, I'll explain a little more about, I'm not sure how many people on the board have seen a floor area ratio variance, because I'm not sure if we've had one really.
Yeah, we've had, we've had.
I was thinking since I've been here, sorry, yes, and I know we've had a lot of new board members, yes. But I can explain, we'll go into the explanation for that and why they're here instead of the planning board, because even though it is a permitted use.
Can I ask another question? I actually Googled Earth the other floor facility, so we can see kind of how close that is to the highway. Is that a smaller
How many,
facility than
do you
what
have,
we're
how many square feet
proposing?
is it?
Much smaller.
Yeah, that's definitely small.
I can't tell you the number offhand, but
I mean,
yes, it's
It's-
also a smaller lot.
It's 3 stories, but I think it's a smaller square feet. But it covers, if you look at I guess our FAR versus theirs, I mean, I don't want to testify to something I don't know. But I mean, I think what we were asking for is not unreasonable compared to that. But we've mitigated and tried to set it back further. And also, you'll see in the video and in the renders, I mean, my render guy thought I was crazy. I'm like, he said, why do you want me to make the trees? Don't you want to see the building? And I'm like, they want to see the trees. So, you're right. I'm like, they want to see the trees. They don't want to see the building. So.
Wait a second. We can't have all these things going on at the
All right,
same
sorry.
time.
What another board did 20 years.
Can you
ago,
pause that?
Obviously, we're
But
not
for
that
sure.
board, and
I agree.
so
I'm not-
Maybe this board would or would not have approved the same application,
And-
different people, different days,
I understand that I'm not trying to pin back to it. Because if Donald could show the video.
So before that starts, is this something they submitted, or we should mark this, I know, however we're gonna mark it as
I
is
got
it,
an email this morning with the video.
so we
So
should
you
probably,
have an electronic version of it.
we should probably note it's gonna be 8-2, I guess, just so we have some. Can you, before you start that, Mr. Prime, can somebody just authenticate what we're gonna see before we start seeing it?
Sure, this is a,
My render guy.
it's a conceptualization of what the site, would look like, kind of like a flyby look of what the site would look like, developed as we've submitted.
At when? How many years from now?
This would be, I don't know, actually.
Because you're going to have trees in there and shown full grown, so is that 20 years from now, 10 years from now?
They'll be mature, those are probably, I'm sure these are mature trees.
20 years from now.
We've just for, this is just suggestion for the board chair and also to the applicant. I mean, and I don't know if the board feels this way, I would prefer to hear testimony on what kind of landscaping is being proposed and what, where,
Well, we
what
wanna
full
see
testimony
landscape
on the board
plans with-
before that might help contextualize the video, because, they have a new landscaping plan. I don't know what height they're proposing planting at, and it just for if the board has a preference. Okay.
Now, so open
Okay.
Yeah.
Just a suggestion.
You're not wrong, but. You know I have 57-year-old eyes.
Right. He takes liberty with the music. I can't, So you can see, the idea was to really try to hide the building,
So we
try
should
to do
just,
earth tones.
just for the record, if somebody of the public wants to see this, it's on, you have it on the website?
It's on the website, I didn't get it till later.
But it will be at some
I can
point.
put it on the website.
Yeah, so, because nobody could see that where the cameras are.
I'd like to see it.
No, that's
No, I
okay.
saw what
I haven't.
If she has the file, you can put on the township website under the zoning board page.
Maybe Donald could talk about the landscape, if that helps.
Yeah, we understood the desire to not really see the building for that. So when we came back with the modified plan, we enlarged the island. Since we moved the building back, enlarged the island along the frontage there, and we selected trees to give you kind of an overall good look throughout the year. So there is dogwood trees. You get your late spring, early summer kind of flowering in there. We selected low bushes for flowering along the frontage there for your early spring. Variegated Acuba japonica, just to give some evergreen buffering low down, so you won't be seeing the cars as much along the frontage there. And then we also selected the green giant Arborvitae. So there's your year-round kind of additional blockage. You don't see the building there. It gives you year-round green. And in between those, we also picked red oak trees, so you have your fall nice pop of color. So something that evolves during the year, you're going to see it change, and it's going to keep up a good aesthetic throughout the year, instead of just a wall of arborvitae where you don't see anything. It's just a wall of green. That's not the aesthetic that you're probably looking for along Route 35. You want something that welcomes people in there. So that's how we selected the landscaping there, to give it a little variety throughout the year, so it's always welcoming as you come up along there. So it gives a good frontage for the building when he has it done, so people feel like that's a site they want to go into.
And what's on the easel now? Just, we got to mark that. I don't know if you're going to testify to that.
Those were from the video, or
Okay.
the video made with them,
You
or,
gotta mark it down
Yeah,
or something.
yeah.
It'll be A2.
Video's 8.2, so that'll be 8.3.
A3, okay.
I just described what it is. There's 4 photos, so just,
They are conceptual photos, views from 35 as different directions and within the parking lot here. So you can see what the building is intended to look like when it's done, when everything's built and things mature. They want a good aesthetic so that it is something that fits with your township. So we didn't just throw some trees down or just put a wall of trees up there. We were looking to make something welcoming and visually appealing for along the frontage there. So that's where you have the low flowering shrubs during the springtime. You'll have the white dogwood trees late spring, early summer, and the arborvitae kind of block in between, and then the red oak, so that that really great pop of red during the fall time there.
Have you done, he mentioned that he has done many of these type of buildings. Are there any buildings that he's done that have a different facade than, to me, that, don't take this the wrong way, I understand it's a storage building, but it looks like a warehouse building. And 20 years from now, for the next 20 years, I'm going to be driving by and seeing that the way it looks before the trees grow. So I'm just wondering if there's a different facade that might blend in, like right next door to you, you're going to have an assisted living place that looks like homes, you know, so yours is going to look like a warehouse. So how can we make the two blend until the trees fill in?
So I'm comfortable with design changes like that and facade changes like that. And we've done them in Miami where they've looked like office buildings. We've done them. I did one in a town in Miramar, Florida, that it's very like sort of Mediterranean. And they said, can you make it look, they thought it was like townhomes. It looked like Mediterranean townhomes. We have one that we're doing also that's in another neighborhood, and you know, they have a lot of just their look with their clubhouses, and we try to be in areas that are more upscale like this, and we understand we can adjust the facade. I mean, that's, if there's something that pleases you, I mean, we can.
You may want to go up to the planning board office and look at the Bright house that's going, what is it called? Bright View that's going up right next to you, to see what their facade looks like, and see if you could do something to blend it in somehow.
Okay. I mean,
that will help me when I'm not going to see trees for 20 years. I'm going to see that facade.
I appreciate that. That's point taken.
I don't know about how everybody else feels.
Yeah, great. One thing that struck me on the list of trees that you mentioned was the Arborvitae. How many deer are on that property?
How many deer?
Deer.
They're going to wipe that out.
They will. They love Arborvitae.
It's like appetizers.
And it's a problem throughout. It's a problem throughout Holmdel.
I wish I knew what an arborvitae was. I only know about palm trees and coconut trees.
Yeah, but
well, coconut trees.
There are some trees. I mean, don't bother with hosta. They'll be gone in 24 hours.
So let the landscape person figure out deer resistance struggles.
Yeah. I mean, Rutgers has some good lists about that.
Lists of all the stuff down we're talking
yeah.
about?
But,
It's on the engineer's letter.
yeah, I mean, the green giant is a slightly deer resistant.
Correct.
But around here, you'll see them barren up to 6 feet.
And then they start falling over.
Because they've been chewed, it's been chewed off.
Okay. For the 6 feet and below is why we chose the Acuba japonica. They fill in, they stay evergreen.
Yeah. Yeah.
They're not a deer.
It's
snack.
not a question that any one particular species you want to mix. You don't want a monoculture. And get things that will provide multi-seasons, as you've suggested, and yet.
Hey, Ralph, from quickly on the sidebar, Kate and I were just chatting across the dais. A lot of these things that we're talking about are in the professionals' letter. Rather than we going in different directions, why don't we let the professionals go down the things that they found and address them this way, where we have some sort of an order here?
Okay,
where it seems like we're going all over the place.
Yeah, I think the question, Mr. Chairman, just not to speak what you said before, but the idea at the start of the hearing was to see what changes they had proposed. And I believe, you know, it was essentially the 10-foot setback and the additional landscaping. But the vast majority of our comments still stand. I mean, it's up to you, Mr. Chairman, if you want.
I think that's a good suggestion,
Dimitri.
Dimitri.
And then we go through this, or, yeah.
Well, I don't know that we need to necessarily go through every item in each of your letters, but if you want to just go through some of the highlights
The ones that,
that stand out to you, and we'll put them on the record, make you folks aware of where we're coming from, and I mean, the letter is a letter that Kate wrote from her point of view. And we have not, as a board, and don't discuss these things, applications outside of the hearing. We're not supposed to. So, but let her put hers out, and we can comment, you can comment. And then, I think, you know, after tonight, if you folks can meet with Kate and Bob on off-site and try to work something out and come back with a proposal that's even better.
Can we just take a minute just to huddle up internally before
Sure.
we proceed?
Sure. 8:25. Well, why don't we just take 5-minute break? Make the use of the facilities too.
Was it?
Stops the recording when we're off.
What did you do? Jesus.
As I said, it's okay with
This is connected to the JY1, came off.
We're going to table this, make some changes, and make a new submission.
Is that why you didn't want it?
Well, we can table it, but we're probably going to have to make a complete.
I don't know, I don't know what the procedure is, attorney, you know, and maybe we can figure it out,
Well,
but I think.
if you
we hear
literally withdraw the application, then you have to start all over again with
Right.
completeness and everything. If you want to just,
Table it then.
Let's, I don't want to withdraw it, I want to table, I want to regroup.
Yeah.
Yeah, that would be great. And
How much time are you asking for?
That's what I don't know.
how much
2
time?
months, 3 months?
Well, we just need we need a character-specific date, so you don't have to renotice, but why don't we
Okay. Can we do-
see, Loretta, what's realistic dates that we can do? I mean, it's gonna be a couple months, it sounds like, Mr.
It might make sense for them to just renotice
Renotice.
if they're going to be making significant changes.
I don't disagree.
Because the variance.
How much time do we need? How
That's
much
your
time do we need?
Yeah, you know what, Mr. Prime, it sounds like there's gonna be significant changes that
Yeah.
will require renotice, so
That's
why don't we
what-
just,
if we're not gonna
what you
carry
say,
the
let's just
notice
withdraw
forward.
it and renotice when you're ready.
well, do you don't, did they have to go through completeness again then?
No.
Oh, that's what I was,
Adjourning
okay.
it, but not to a date.
Correct.
Correct, so we're not
Correct.
continuing.
There's
it.
no
So we don't
new
have to go back to
carry.
the completeness? Okay,
No, no, no.
all right.
Okay,
that's
so adjourning it, not withdrawing it. So you're adjourning to a date not certain,
And we'll renotice.
and we renotice? Bonnie, you okay? No, we don't have a date, they don't have a date, so they will have to renotice. Yeah, so the variance notice would be different.
I'm just concerned that, I'm glad you're doing that, that's good, but I don't know if we had a chance to all give our thoughts before you start, do this whole thing all over again, and come back and now we pick on something else. So I think it would be good if somehow we continued this and give you some more feedback before you,
Take and adopt. Right.
and whatever you can, like my thoughts with the facade, maybe you'll come back with 3 different facades that we could look at. That's just the thought, my thought. But I don't know what else there may come up, other than the engineering things that are on paper that they all have talked about.
So what I would say is,
We just, I don't want
Hang
to cut
on.
you off. We gotta just,
One
too many
one at
people.
a, yeah.
So before we get to those comments, just to get to withdraw adjournment issue, we're trying to figure out, so we don't have an extension issue coming
Oh,
up
sure,
and
yeah.
your consent. We
So
probably
does-
should pick a target date,
That's fine.
and then we get your consent to extend to then, and then we'll figure out what it is. But it's, we have some pretty big things in September, so you're gonna be in October no matter what, I have a feeling.
October's fine.
November.
November 9th? Yeah, I mean, we have notice requirements from New Jersey that we have to follow.
I think, yeah.
So
That's fine.
you're gonna, but you're gonna agree to renotice anyway, is that correct?
Yes, we will renotice, for sure.
November
The time? Yes.
third. Yeah,
Yeah, of course.
yeah, thank you.
Notice
That's great.
decision.
That's just a procedural thing that we need to do to.
And believe me, they're gonna work fast now.
Okay, now, do you want to take any
I
other
hope they're not
discussion or
charging me.
comments yet
No?
tonight,
Okay.
or not?
Say it
Yeah, I'd
again?
love to hear whatever feedback you have for us that we can take and try to improve.
I think you've heard our concerns.
Yeah.
We're
Right.
concerned about both the front and the rear yard setback.
Right.
That's not to say obviously.
That's what I was,
There's been nothing. Well, he's testified.
Board likes to see that you try
I guess on the,
to
what we've heard so far,
meet the
it's not a lot.
requirements as much as possible, and to ask for as small a variance as possible, so that always helps.
Okay.
and the devil's in the details, but, yeah.
I know it's not normal protocol, we always have our comments at the end for the public. I think it might be beneficial to you if we get a few, they get 3 minutes apiece. Maybe at one point before we adjourn, we let the public come up and say what their concerns are, because they live behind this development. It's
Some of
Meadowbrook.
the members of the public are behind.
And I'm also happy to stick around after and
You're always
talk to
welcome to
people
do that.
directly.
But
can do that.
Dimitri, we shouldn't take comments. We're not there yet. We should take questions of what we've heard. So if the public has questions of what we've heard, there's been a lot of general comments made, testimony. Let's leave it to that. I don't think we should jump ahead to comments on something we don't have before us. So
Right.
we're kind of getting overboard, I think.
Okay,
where we
so it's agreed, we will, later, a little bit later, we'll adjourn this hearing to November 9th. You will grant an extension. The anticipation is you will renotice
They
for
will.
November
They will
9th.
renew.
And so with that, are there any, the idea is to get concerns out on the table, not necessarily every last detail. Kate's letter's out there, Bob's letter's there. Loretta, when you put the other stuff on the website, can you get Kate and Bob's letters on the website as well so the public can see them? Because they are public documents. Are there any other topics that board members would like to just put on the table? You don't have to solve anything tonight.
I have a concern. Besides the setbacks, the FAR variance that you're requested is very large. So I suggest if you're going to go back and rework your plans, not just stick to the setbacks and the landscaping, the FAR is definitely a concern.
Right. I think, I hear you, and I think also if we cut back some setbacks, it's going to shave off FAR. It's shaving off the building, it's going to shave FAR. So I think just to kind of even, force a compliance, I mean, it's going to be hard for us to stay in the box. I mean, it's going to be hard to stay in the box. But I mean, if whatever we do is going to end up cutting back building and cutting down FAR request. And
I just don't want you to come back November
Yeah,
4th and
okay.
find you've got another issue on top of to solve.
Why don't you sit down? You don't need to address every last comment. Let's just get them out on the table so you can consider them. Yes.
He's on a roll.
Okay. Irfan, do you have any other thoughts that you want to put on the table?
No, I'm good.
Jason?
Just the setback to the wetlands, not being so close.
Dimitri?
It's completely off track of what we've been talking about, but as a first responder, I always look at buildings and how, if I have a first aid call on the third floor in some corner of this building, how I'm going to get there. Are the elevators wide enough to accommodate a stretcher, which means like at least 7 or 8 foot square? I don't know if the architect did that. And how am I going to get to that elevator from the front door? How are we going to back up the ambulance there? And if you want first aid's comments, you could ask us and we could give you that. And then, of course, my other hat, which is not exactly my hat, would be fire department. How would the pumpers get in there? And I don't know if there's a letter yet from the fire department. They got a chance to review this yet? Kate, did they?
Yes.
They did? So they already gave them comments?
Yeah, I don't think there were any comments.
Okay, then that's fine.
Yes.
But as a first responder, EMS, we're all volunteers here. I'm just looking, how am I going to go, somebody has a heart attack in the corner of the building, how long is it going to take us to find them and get to them?
I just have one, yes, and those are noted in my letter too, and I'm happy to go over with any of the applicants' professionals. The other thing that I just want to note that hasn't come up tonight is that there's a lot of discrepancies between plan documentation on whether this is going to be on sewer or septic. I think there's a lot of questions.
I was just going to come to that.
Yeah.
We got.
And I don't, and the Board of Health replied, the Township Infrastructure replied, and everyone's kind of asking what's going on here.
I mean, there is.
The contract had to access, right?
Right.
The sewer line, they had to pay to access the sewer hookup. So I don't think that's readily accessible from there, and you would have to go like they did.
Right, and they do show a septic field on the plans, but a lot of other documentation mentions that it's going to be hooked up to township sewer.
There's a lot of general discrepancies, right? Well, so I guess,
Yes.
like, in fairness, there's a lot of stuff for the next round that's got to get cleaned up, so that for you and Bob, everything's in agreement, everything's well marked, all the
Yes,
dimensions
absolutely.
are readily.
What?
Yeah, that one is particularly just reminded me because people who aren't here mentioned it in their letter. People in some of the outside township.
One of the other things related to septic.
Yes, absolutely, Valerie.
Septic versus sewer. It is in the Bayshore Regional Sewerage Authority service area. So if you do sewer, it has to hook up to Bay Shore. The infrastructure in northern Holmdel is owned and operated by Holmdel Township. So if you want to talk to the engineer about how that would hook up, you'd have to talk to township engineer, not to the board engineer, because that's outside connection and it's outside the scope of this board.
The Brightview went through the rear, through a township-owned parcel with an easement.
They didn't go through the highway.
Right.
I knew that for a fact.
Yep. And
So-
there's a sewer system back there, pipe that's back.
And and then alternatively, the septic, you need to take the, deal with the county. Township does not have, any longer have a Board of Health, and it's all done through the county.
When we were speaking to the fire department question, a member of the public that wanted to comment or had a question about the fire department comments.
We'll get to that.
Yeah. I saw a member of the public comment.
Yeah, okay. Okay. Gene, did you have anything else?
No, I think everybody had
Okay.
I have a positive for you, because I feel bad that we dumped all this negativity on you. So the positive is, it's a very low traffic site, right? So it's not another store, it's not Whole Foods, it's not a giant thing that's gonna attract a lot of noise and traffic for, either for that corridor or for the adjoining property. So I think the idea of the use of the site itself is very positive, and I can see from your drawing that you've tried very hard to have an aesthetically, even if it doesn't please everybody, that you've tried to have a very aesthetically pleasing facility. So I didn't want you to leave here thinking that it's just all negative, and so it's not. So I definitely want you to understand there are positives. It just, for this board, there's a lot you're asking us for that really go against what typically, is in our comfort zone to bring. So we appreciate you trying to do the application.
Kate, you've had a couple of comments. Bob, do you have anything to add to the list as you go through the letter, which has got many, many items in it?
No, but I just would, obviously, we reserve the right with new plans. There's going to be a new letter. A lot of these comments may go away, but there may be new comments raised by this revision. We'll be happy to work with the applicant's engineer and landscape architect through the process and try to eliminate discrepancies before we get them.
Okay, that's through the board. So with the board's okay, we'll ask for questions from the public on the testimony given this evening. No final comments. That comes much later after we have all the things wrapped up. So please, if you want to ask a question, please come to the microphone.
What was the testimony? It's just the gentleman?
Just the owner
And the landscape.
And the landscape. If you wish to come forward to the microphone, identify yourself for the record. And be aware things may change, and what we'd like to do is just get a broad brush of issues you're concerned about.
Sure.
And questions, so that over time that can get answered.
Rob Bealen, 26 Bayberry Drive. Good evening, board. So there's a couple things. This sounds, this project sounds, I just found out about it today, just like I guess their landscaping plans were updated today. I found out today, so it's kind of like a wash. So I'm good with that. The area ratio thing, right? The FAR. So basically, I have a whole bunch of notes, but I'm just going to try and summarize it and throw some stuff out so we can get through this a little bit quicker. Right? We've been beating up this dead horse all night. So it's in the form of a question. Yes.
Okay.
Yes. So is the problem that they need that area, so they need the more square footage? Because can they downgrade it? Can they downgrade it to be more conducive to the piece of land that they have? Or who's their guy?
He's the owner.
Yeah. I'm Mitch. I'm Rob. How you doing, Mitch?
Thanks for the dig.
Which one? I had a good one about the whole technology thing, because, technology in my family, I used to be the remote control, now we got a remote, so.
All right, guys. No, thank you. So, yeah, when we go back,
Yeah.
like what we just said, as we step back the building, we're gonna lose square feet.
Right.
So it'll adjust as well. So
Right.
that'll
But
come
I-
less.
Right, but I know there's like square footage to profit margin, so your profit should not impede on kind of our way of living, but it has to be conducive to that land, so.
Yeah, I get it. I mean,
Yeah.
we're mitigating it as best as we can for the
Right.
project that we can do
Right.
to make it as efficient as possible and still
Right.
make for profit.
So what would be the hardship in this whole thing? I read hardship a couple times, and I know you want to get rid of.
We haven't even testified to any of this yet. This isn't even.
So to answer the question, as we step back the building, we'll be lowering the FAR.
Yeah. But in the end, his financing is not a concern of this board.
Thank you for bringing it to my attention. I heard a lot about, and it's going to be a question. So, the frontage sounds great, setbacks and all this stuff, and they're over coverage or area or whatever terminology we want to use, right? But on Bayberry, we have a lot of issues that have not been addressed in this proceeding today. So, for instance, Mitch, mentioned the beautiful LED lights that are going to come. They're going to be around the building on the plot of land owned by the township, right? So it's going to be reflecting in our yards. This is going to be a concrete structure with, what kind of roof?
Well, you're going into areas that we haven't
Okay.
addressed. In terms of lighting, I'll just make the...
Well, it's not, there's a lot of things. So like, what are you going to do? Was there an environmental study? What's the impact of it?
All of that will be to come.
In fairness, we didn't get very far,
Right.
right?
But the township, there are ordinances about lighting. Lighting will be addressed, and we routinely require that all lighting be shielded and there no light fall off outside the property lines.
So what would be a safety feature that you're going to put up on your land? And listen, I'm not trying to beat you. I got to live there, right? So we have this assisted living building coming in behind us, which it's really a beautiful project that they're putting in. And you guys want to take away like the buffering and sound parts of it. That's a very fragile community that's going to be living there. And from a sound standpoint, a concrete structure, how are you going to negate people 2 o'clock in the morning or 10 o'clock in the evening loading and unloading when we have a very fragile group
So
of
Rob,
people
if I
living?
could just jump in.
Yes, sir.
That's going to be their engineer who wasn't even here tonight. That's not the owner. He can say he can give his opinion, but he's not the engineer. And the engineer is what the testimony's going to come from. That's going to answer most of these site
I
questions.
just came here tonight just waiting for, I felt like I was going to get a whole bunch of boxes checked.
And you
You know what I
did.
mean? And that's why I'm sorry I'm
We
asking.
just start, but we,
Sorry, we just, in fairness to the applicant,
Yeah.
we didn't let him get there,
Right.
right? He's trying to get Holmdel zoning board wall,
Yeah.
and now he's got to go back.
Right.
Yeah, we have a reputation.
So November 9th is when we'll see him?
Yeah.
perhaps.
You-
No, I'll see November 9th.
Just the LED lights, I was talking about inside the building. All the hallways, I was talking about inside.
Right.
All LED
Just
lights.
take us into consideration.
And
right?
Bob,
So
just,
thank you,
the
sir.
tentative date is November 9th or whatever it is, but they will renotice, so you'll get another notice. Because if
I
they
didn't
miss
get a
it,
notice to begin with. I read it.
Okay.
you may not be within 200 feet. but-
Yeah, I know, that's why.
Yeah, anybody within 200 feet, but keep an eye on the website.
Don't worry, I'll find out, but thank you, board.
Okay.
But with all fairness to all the public, the applicant offered to meet everybody out in the lobby when we're done, and maybe you can address some questions to them
Right.
that might help them with their project.
Thank you, Mr. Fontopoulos.
Very good.
Okay.
Just want to ask one question. My name is Marie DeMarco. I'm 40 Bayberry Drive. I'm right next to the retention area. The back of this building will be facing the back of my house. What considerations have been given to the homeowner's setback on the wetlands? Because it's right there. You have 0% consideration for the wetlands. That's right there. I'd like to know what amendments have been made to that area.
The wetlands, we were honoring the 50-foot buffer.
You gotta come up and use the mic, or we're not gonna pick you up.
We're honoring the 50-foot buffer required by DEP from the wetlands itself. There's approximately 300 feet of wetlands and woods from the back of the building to the back of the lot that's remaining untouched. That's going to remain as it is
300
natural.
feet from-
Approximately from the back of the building, the closest point in the back of the building, to the rear lot line.
To the rear lot line of...
And I believe
Of
Bayberry's...
Meadowwoods retention area.
Correct.
See you on November 9th.
Anyone else?
Hi, I'm Kimberly Conan at 6 Regal Court, and I'm just really confused about the discussion about the roof height. And I don't think it was answered in a simple fashion that people can understand. So I want to know, as a resident of Meadowwood Estates walking on Bayberry, I know there's talk about averages and whatnot. Am I going to be able to see the roof line of the back of the building walking on Bayberry?
I don't think we have.
We don't have an answer.
Confused about that too.
Okay.
And I don't think we.
No,
I think
we,
that's one of the things
our
we need to
our
find
planner
answers about.
and our zoning officer will be talking with their engineer to get black and white answers.
We're
And we
working
don't
with
have
them
them.
to get, the actual calculations that they use. That may not be able to answer your, I won't be able to answer your question specifically, but I can, the goal is by the next hearing, we'll have an idea. We'll know what the height is per the township ordinance, and then the applicant can provide, they'll provide testimony on the visual impact of that.
Okay, and then I had another question about the impact on sewer and water flow, but I don't know, is that appropriate to ask at this time or table it for next?
We are not clear yet which they're going to use.
Okay.
They have proposed a septic system, and the County Board of Health has responded with a letter that we got yesterday saying they have to, before the county board will consider it, they have to do soil testing and a whole bunch of other things, and that's within the outside our jurisdiction.
Okay, so I'm going to hold that for now. Okay, thank you.
Hi, Eva Hyris, 24 Bayberry Drive. I just have a simple question. I've been living in my home for almost 20 years in October. That strip of property on Highway 35 has been given zero attention, as far as I can tell as a homeowner living directly behind. No maintenance, aesthetically very unpleasing.
So the zoning board has nothing to do with how.
Okay.
You're in the wrong meeting.
But my question, I have a question. Before everything, all the attention is given to the aesthetics from Highway 35, please consider the residents that live behind there, and whether we're 200 feet or not from this particular building, we will be affected by it. Like my neighbor just said, walking down Bayberry, will we be looking at a giant building, kind of like on Palmer Avenue on the Middletown side? There's a warehouse that's right up against Palmer Avenue. Is that what we're going to be looking at from our neighborhood now, that the homes in there are selling for almost $900,000? So the next meeting, I'm going to make sure that everybody comes to this meeting from my neighborhood, because to sit and say from Highway 35 aesthetically, what's the buffer going to be and all that, you guys, no one mentioned the residents. That's very unfair, and we should all get notice about these meetings.
Yeah, but we didn't really.
We haven't gotten anywhere in that
But
regard. The
I
notice goes
understand that,
to,
but
We
The-
always consider the residents in everything.
no one brought up the residents this whole night.
We didn't make it past discussing about buffers.
We'll get
and
there.
setbacks.
Okay, because
And in terms
this
of,
property is being split up in a few different pieces. So before all that happens, we as homeowners should be notified and have a say. That's all I'm saying.
we're following New Jersey rules,
Okay.
and New Jersey law specifies that people within 200 feet get notified and not others.
But the neighbor across the street that gets to see the back of this building might not be 200 feet, but she's going to get a big building in
That's
front of
New
her.
Jersey law, which we
Okay, well,
follow. And
Maybe
if
we
you
can
want,
bend the law a little bit and let
No,
the residents know?
we
No, of
can't
course
bend the
we
law.
can't. Okay.
And just so you know, one of my concerns that I brought up was the distance to the wetlands,
Right.
the proximity, so that needs to be addressed.
Right. right, thank you.
And in terms of, if you're not noticed, the way you can find out is call Loretta. She keeps a calendar on what upcoming meetings are.
It's on the website, the town website shows all the agenda for all
Well,
the meetings.
I confess I
But-
really don't visit the website very often. If my
Yeah.
neighbor didn't tell me about the meeting, I wouldn't have known about it. But that's my concern. As residents, I feel like we've lived behind this property looking, with Peck Farms looking so pretty on Highway 35 that
So
it's
just so you
kind of
know-
funny.
But just so you know though, right, this is not, so Peck Farms is on the Granado property, and that's gonna be the assisted living facility.
Okay.
This is a different tract, which is
Okay.
separate from that tract.
Right.
And the Granado property is not in front of this board, that went to the planning board.
Okay, well, I don't know what property and how it's split up, who owns what, but it's been, that whole strip of highway has been neglected all these years. So I'm just concerned, before we give all the attention to Highway 35 aesthetics, I hope that Meadowwood Estates and Bayberry will be put into the equation.
Okay.
That's
Thank
more
you.
of a comment than a question, so I'm sorry, but I just
Sure.
wanted to
Thank
get
you
that
for
out
the
there.
comment.
Thank you.
Eva, usually what happens, we didn't get to it like everybody said, and I'm pretty tough with that, is I would be talking about buffering landscape in the rear of the property. And we haven't even bothered talking about that because we just got stuck up here.
That's the wet-
Well, even behind the
It sounds like there's
wetlands.
no buffer, they're going right up
There,
to this
along their
property.
property line, we would be discussing it,
No,
and
the wetlands goes to the property line.
Right.
Yeah, we're way ahead.
Okay, thank you.
Did you see Eva, did you see this?
No, I didn't see anything, we don't have anything.
it's all on the website.
Not yet.
Come
It
here.
will-
It will be.
This one is not there yet, for sure.
All right, let the next person come up and speak.
Okay, let's one at a time, please.
This is off the record.
Yeah. Identify yourself, please, for the record.
Barbara Castiglione, 20 Bayberry Drive.
Okay, yeah.
Okay.
Go
The
ahead.
question is to all of you. We have a lot of concerns as residents of Bayberry Drive and Meadowwood Estates. I also have concerns for Brightview Senior Community. It is an assisted living community. I am in that world, having had my parents in assisted living for the past years. This is not compliant with laws of nursing homes. These people that will be residing there are going to be free to come and go, as I do in my
That's-
development.
That's
So
not
please
there.
take into consideration the type of business that you place next to their homes, because they are their homes. Thank you.
Okay. Anyone else? Okay, I think that's enough for tonight. You said Irfan has a 9 o'clock meeting. We just.
Thank you.
If you wanna get one of the.
Are we doing the,
I suggest
Are we
Loretta,
doing-
over the next day or two, will get more of these documents to the township website on the zoning board page.
we're not
So
doing
with
it?
that, let's move on. We have one more item of business
Right.
yet tonight.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you all.
Okay.
And, as you work together and get close to something, then we'll be in contact with Loretta. And if November 9th isn't the right date, she can work with you on an appropriate date.
Okay. Yeah.
Uh,
Memorializing resolution, item 4, 32 Apple Grove Drive, Robert Fanny's, zoning board number 462, block 50, lot 58 in the R40B zone. Applicant granted relief for the height of an existing accessory garage building for 18.2 feet, where 15 feet is the allowable height. Approved relief for lot coverage of 17 3/8%, where 22.6% was requested, and where 15% is allowed.
Okay, we did just, in the last day, get the draft resolution from Marty. Can we have one meeting, please? And Marty sent in, I did review it, and Loretto reviewed it, and he fixed a couple of comments.
Yes.
Does anybody have any other additions or corrections to the draft resolution? You're both okay?
I make a motion to approve the resolution.
We have a motion, is there a second?
Val. I make a motion.
For this guy's garage? Yeah, I was.
Yeah.
No, you weren't there. I don't think so. No.
Yeah, because I sat in your seat. No, I was next to you. No, I was next to you. Yeah, I sat over there next to you. Yeah, she was here. She was here.
I just came back from Nashville and
Yeah.
I had my.
Yes, you had your mask on. I remember that, yes.
I have Val for a question, first question of the evening that night.
I second it.
Okay, there's a motion and a second. Okay, any other corrections? All in favor of approving the resolution?
Yes.
Aye.
Opposed? Roll call, okay.
Well, so to be clear, I made a motion and someone seconded it?
Yeah, Dimitri.
I thought Dimitri did. Yeah.
Ms. Savran?
Yes.
Dr. Blumenthal?
Yes.
Mr. Burko?
Yes, to approve.
Ms. Campus?
Yes.
Dr. Latif?
Yes.
Mr. Luciani?
Yes.
And Mr. O'Connor?
Yes.
Do we have things on September 7th?
No, that was my next.
Cancel that meeting?
Which one?
September 7th. There's no agenda, shall we, at this point, if it hasn't been noticed, then forget it. So is there a motion to cancel the meeting on September 7th?
Yes. Yes.
Is that a second?
I'll second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Kate, do you have anything else?
I do not, no.
Bob?
Nothing else, Mr. Chairman, thank you.
Loretta? Bonnie? Marty?
Motion adjourned.
There's a motion to adjourn, is there a second?
Seconded.
All in favor?
Aye.
You're 2 minutes late.
Thanks, that's great.
Very good.
Thank you, Rob.
Okay, bye. Can we get by?
Okay.
This one is to you. Is it more setback from the road that's your fixture, or is it what?
Based on what they've submitted is your reference. The variance from the front is a bigger variance.
Bigger to-
That's like,
Correct.
setback is 100, they're at 60, and back is at 20.
Yeah,
But
we're
they
still
can get-
recording.
Get any relief from that, and nobody's seeing that. On the other hand,